So I can confirm that you are live.
Okay. Good evening. All right, good evening and welcome to the June 8th, 2022 Design Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Ted Farquhar. I'm the chair of the committee. I'm going to now at 4:34 call the meeting to order. And I'd also like to make a land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I'll next like to go to a roll call, and I'd ask if everybody could just do an audio and video check when I call your name. First up is the Vice Chair, Jessie Hiscock.
Present.
Next, Thomas Gribben.
Here.
Next is Alex Kachuk. Alex is not present at this moment. Next up is Sarah McDonald.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, Nancy Solomon.
PC is not PC.
Nancy is not present. Christina Verissimo. Christina is not present. Sujana Devakatuni.
I'm here.
You. And Nicholas Robbins.
Using a writing machine.
Nicholas is not here. I see. So we have 5 people, which is quorum. So we will proceed. I guess next I'll actually ask for a sound and video check for the supporting staff. Sean Otis.
Can you hear me?
Very good, Sean.
Okay.
Thank
Hi.
you. Next is Stephanie Norman, Principal Planner and Development Officer.
Hi there.
Hi. Next is Ashley Beavis, Planner 2 and Development Officer.
Hello.
Hi. And Jill McGillicuddy, DLA.
I am here.
Okay. All right. So before we get into our application, there's 2 things that we're going to discuss briefly. The first thing is Sean will have the floor, and he's going to talk about the charter amendments or Bill 137 and how that's changed things for design advisory committees in HRM. Sean, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's been a few changes to the Halifax Regional Municipal Charter based on the provincial task force that has been created to, I guess, move developments along quicker within the Halifax Regional Municipality. So some changes were made to the Halifax Regional Charter regarding planning applications. And one in particular that I guess has been discussed is the one of the roles of committees of council. And there is a section that talks about the Halifax Regional Municipal Charter and applicable municipal planning strategies or any bylaw or practice of the Halifax Regional Municipality, where the Halifax Regional Municipal Council is considered any planning decision under Part 8 of the Act, or a community council is considering a planning decision it is empowered to make under the policy established in the community council. The council or community council may not refer the matter to a planning advisory committee or any other advisory committee of the council for a recommendation prior to council's or the community council's decision on this matter. So we've discussed this internally and we had a look at it, and the recommendation and the change to the charter is specific to community council and council as an advisory committee, and where this committee makes recommendations to the development officer, this is not applicable. So the land use bylaw requirements that are outlined in the regional center land use bylaw still are maintained, and that's why we have the application in front of us today. there's any questions on that, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Sean. We'll open the floor. Got Jesse or Tom or Sarah or Susanna, is there anything you'd like to ask Sean?
Yes,
Oh.
just a quick question. Was that the recommendation from within council, or was that a recommendation from the planning department to not have the design review committees, have them disbanded? Is that an internal request from councillors or the planning department? That's my question.
The recommendation to the task force?
Recommendation to no longer have design advisory committees reporting directly to council.
Oh, I don't
they're
know
not-
who would
They're
be the
not reporting.
recommendation to the
You don't-
task force?
You don't know who made the recommendation?
No, it would have been discussions internally with the province and HRM planning and development. But the committee, the committee makes a recommendation to the development officer. That hasn't not changed with the new bylaw, and that continues.
Yeah,
With
okay.
this.
I realize that, Sean, but I wasn't asking about our committee. I was asking about the other committees that have now been.
Oh, okay. I thought you were specific to this committee. Okay. Yeah. So the recommendation was between the plan development department and the discussions with the task force in the province.
And you do feel that then that public involvement is sufficiently covered in the planning documents as they stand now?
I can't comment on provincial committees that make decisions outside of the charter. I wouldn't want to speculate on that.
We'll go to Sarah next. And Tom, if you have a follow-up, you can still ask questions. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Tom, to answer your question a little bit more directly, as far as I understand from how it was reported, the province made the decision to essentially remove these committees from the situation at this point. So, and it looks like they found, I guess, one workaround with our committee because we don't answer into council. So my question was just, are there any other planning committees? For example, design review committee isn't necessarily an exclusively advisory committee. So I was just curious if that one's still in existence as well.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. We don't in this section take things to the design review committee, so I have not checked to see if that committee is still functioning and doing the recommendations.
I think they are still in place because they're an approval body. So I think that the design review committee still stands at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Jesse, Susanna?
Nothing for me.
Okay, I think that's all. Sean, thanks very much for the update. I think the next thing we wanted an update on was the renewal process and the appointment process for replacement members and new members for the Design Advisory Committee. I was wondering, Jill, if you could just give an explanation where we're at and so on and so forth, like we discussed earlier.
Sure thing. So we are currently still working with our colleagues across the municipality to have new members appointed as a result of the recent recruitment. I can advise the committee, though, that in accordance with the public appointment policy, any members who are on the committee now whose term was set to expire, you do continue to be active members in the committee until there are new appointments. So it's at the discretion of council. So if you have any questions, I certainly can field those for you.
Yeah, okay, so we're all still members until we are replaced by council or if somebody decides to resign. Jesse, Sarah, Tom, Susanna. Just go ahead, Sarah.
I'm just wondering why the process took so much longer this time around.
I can't really give you a definitive answer to that. I know, like I said, colleagues are working on it. I believe partially too, it was right when Bill 137 was dropped, was right in the middle of it, which probably has put a bit of a, there's just some outstanding questions there.
Okay. Any more
It's,
questions?
It's a very interesting process, Jill, that it's almost like we're here waiting for the guillotine to drop. The councillors actually make the decision on who should be on the committee and who should not. Have you ever sat in their discussions? Do they say that this guy's really annoying, let's get rid of him? Or is it just alphabetical? Or it sounds very interesting that our city councillors sit around saying, well, he should be on the committee and she shouldn't. Have you any idea how that works? It's just a matter of interest. It's irrelevant.
And I certainly can put you in touch with the person who writes the reports and forwards them off to council. It's really outside of my purview, so I'm not able to again, I apologize, not able to give you a definitive answer on that, but I certainly can provide you with the person who can help you out with that.
Well, it's up to Ted. I mean, I just thought it was an interesting that you say councillors make the decision and whether we stay on or whether we are replaced. Have you any idea how many people have applied in the recent application to join this committee?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't have access to that. But yeah, I mean, under policy, it is, anyone's appointment to any board is at the discretion of council.
Oh, I realize that. Yeah. Okay. Well, everybody's passing the buck. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Tom. Okay, let's go to item number 2. Approval of the minutes for February 9th of 2022. The minutes were distributed to everybody, and they've also been on the website for a couple months now. I would ask, open the floor for any omissions or errors that anybody has spotted or that they wish to raise. If I hear none, I'm going to call for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Again, may I ask a question? Reading those minutes again after many months, these are the revised minutes that as a group we asked the revisions to be included. Was there any public comment? Because the minutes were pretty damning on the committee, the role of the committee, the job that it does. And I'm wondering if they sat out there in the public. I didn't hear a squeak about it. And I'm wondering, was there any reaction at all to this self-damning that we insisted was put in the minutes of the meeting? Any takers? Any comment? No.
I'd say, Tom, why don't we hold off? Maybe we can talk with that offline about whether or not there's any comments on that. I mean, nothing would ever come back to me, and if it did, it would probably come through like a report to the committee.
Okay.
I'd rather we should just focus on like the business at hand first off. I do have a mover, and I need a seconder for the minutes. Seconded by Tom. Okay, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor of the minutes as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, hearing none, I'll declare that the motion passes. The minutes pass as presented. Thank you. Next item is the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Jill, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There are no additions or deletions.
All right, thank you very much. So once again, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. May I have a mover, please?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Jesse. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it. Sarah?
Seconded by Sarah. I'll call for the question. All in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Item 4, business arising out of the minutes. There is no business. Item 5 is a call for a declaration of conflicts of interest. We have one application today in Dartmouth with WM Ferris. Is there any conflicts there that anybody would like to declare right now? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6, consideration of deferred business. There is none. Item 7 is correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Jill, do we have any correspondence?
There was no correspondence received for this evening's meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any petitions?
There were no petitions received by the clerk's office.
Then I'll ask the members of this committee, do you have any petitions to submit? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7.3, presentations. There are none. Item 8, informations items brought forward. There are none. That takes us to item 9 and 9.1.1, which is case 23998, the site plan approval for 18 to 24 Faulkner Street, 5 Dixon Street, and 56 to 64 Lyle Street in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. We're going to have Ashley Beavis do a presentation for us. Ashley, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just going to share my screen. Give me one sec.
And I'll add one thing I forgot to mention. Representing the applicant is Ramon Solomon and John Dibb from WM Affairs.
So good afternoon, Chair and members of the Design Advisory Committee. My name is Ashley Beavis, and I'm a Planner 2 Development Officer with the Land Development and Subdivision Group. I'm here to present a pre-application site plan approval to the committee for 18 to 24 Faulkner Street, 5 Dixon Street, and 56 to 64 Lyle Street in Dartmouth. The property is zoned CEN 1, Center 1, under the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw. Currently, there are 10 individual lots that make up the area where the proposed development will be located. Presently, 7 lots are vacant, while the remaining 3 have existing buildings that will be removed. Here is a context map showing the location of the subject property outlined in red. As you can see, it is close to the McDonald Bridge, where the on and off ramp is parallel to Lyle Street. Here is a context map that is more site-based. The abutting lot at the corner of Dixon Street and Lyle Street is the home to a tattoo shop that will remain and is separate from this development. These site photos were taken on June 2nd. The top right photo is the corner of Faulkner and William Street looking towards the site. And the bottom left is looking down Lyle Street with the site on the right-hand side and the bridge to the left. The photo on the right is looking down Lyle Street again, but this one you can see the existing buildings to be removed as well as the tattoo shop on the corner that is not part of this development. The photo on the left is looking at the site across from Dixon Street. The proposed is a 26-story, 160-unit residential building. The proposed building is classified as a high-rise building under the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw. The applicant is requesting a variation for the street wall articulation and has proposed wider horizontal access recesses for the street wall articulation. The committee is being asked to provide a recommendation regarding the variation requirements of Part 9 of the Regional Center Plan. Part 9, Chapter 1, Section 391(1) says, the requirements of section 359 and 360, which is the articulation of the street wall, may be varied by site plan approval to enable any alternative methods of street wall articulation. When considering the site plan approval under this subsection, the following shall be met. An alternative method of street wall articulation effectively contributes to the visual interest and appeal of the street wall by providing public art and either wider and more dramatic changes to the projection or recesses that are then required under section 359 and 360, or distinct curves or forms on the street wall. The applicant has proposed public art on the site to contribute to the visual interest and appeal of the street wall. A professional artist, Vasilius Vasili, has created a sculpture approximately 10 feet in height made of stone, and it will be located near the building's main entrance at the corner of William Street and Faulkner Street. This location was chosen as this will be the most where most of the pedestrian and vehicular traffic is circulated. In addition, the applicant has proposed wider and more dramatic recesses along the street wall. The applicant has noted that the wider and horizontal recesses contrast with the simplicity of the tower and vertical spans that highlight the height of the and to support the overall design. These renderings are from the front of the building, which is off William Street. Here you can see the proposed wider and more dramatic recesses along the street wall and how it relates to the rest of the building. These recesses extend on all sides of the building. The following are renderings of the proposed public art piece. Here you can see the location of the public art in relation to the building, as well as how it relates to the development as a whole. Here's a site plan where you can see the red hatched area at the bottom left-hand corner, which is the proposed location of the public art, which is at the corner of William and Faulkner Street. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Design Advisory Committee. That concludes my report or my presentation. Should you have any questions, please let me know.
That's great. Thank you, Ashley. Before we go into a motion, I'll just open the floor to questions about the application. Right? Would anybody like to ask a question of Ashley?
Is the public art piece like finalized, or is it in a very early conceptual stage?
Through the chair, this would be the final design unless any recommendations from the committee come through this presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, any other further questions for Ashley?
Yeah. Is there a difference between asking Ashley questions, or is this the time for comments, Ted? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, actually what I'd like to do is ask Ashley questions, and if there's questions that you have about the design which she can't answer, then we could have Ramon or John Dibb answer them from the developer. When we get to the comment stage, we'll put the motion on the floor first, and then we'll go through our discussion about everything, including all comments. Make sense?
Yeah.
Great.
Ashley, is there not a public art review committee for the city of Halifax? It's a little unfair to present a committee like ours who do not claim to be artists to decide, is this art or is this concrete? Is there a committee for public art in the city?
Through the chair, I'm not aware. Stephanie, I'm not sure if you can answer that.
Thank you, Ashley. We do have a group that looks at the public art, and we did speak to them to get a little bit of feedback. But really, this piece of public art meets the land use bylaw, which essentially is just looking for something to be created by a professional artist.
So it doesn't really matter what it is. That as long as it's done by an artist.
Well, the idea is that it's done by a professional artist who has experience in creating pieces of art. So it's not for staff to approve the piece of art itself. It's to ensure that it's created by a professional.
There we go.
If I would, I mean, it's a comment, it's a question. I find it's not art at all. It doesn't inspire me in the slightest. I'm not quite sure whether it was the discussion on how the public can see the perspective of Dartmouth through the gap and the thing. I don't know. So, but I would rather have an artist than my opinion kind of thinking. I strongly feel that this involvement for public art should be moving to the future. We should be demonstrating public art through sustainability, through windmills or a filtering garden or something else rather than thing. But I will leave that for the comment period, Ted. I see you going. So.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Sarah, you're up.
Thanks. I'm just trying to gain some clarification here. There's only one portion of the building that we're being asked to comment on. Could you let us know what would be the difference if they built it as of right without coming to community?
To the chair. So under section 359 of the land use bylaw, it requires vertical sections in addition to 2 methods indicated in subsection 4, which include different colors, different materials, different textures, living walls, projections, or recesses. So the variation is asking for horizontal recesses instead of vertical recesses.
Yeah, I think we've seen that in other applications. Like every so many meters, 8 meters, you have to have a change in the material or a change in whether it's cantilevered or inset or what have you. And this is not that way. So that's the variance. All right. Sujana, what's your question?
I just have a comment. I agree with Tom in the sense that this is not a very inspiring art piece. And definitely, because the viewpoint is at such a low level, I would probably be looking into the neighbor's backyard if I try to see the view of Dartmouth from that low point. So I don't think this is the right art piece. And also the angle on the art piece doesn't correspond to the building in any way, or it doesn't even stand out on its own. So maybe the artists need to look at the concept again and rethink the artist piece.
Sujana, we'll get to that when we get to the motion and we get to the commentary. We'll actually break down this the request piece by piece, including the art portion. Jesse.
We possibly have the applicant explain why this art was chosen. Seems like some thought has went into it. So yeah, the rationale there, why the artist was selected, why that form be helpful.
Okay. Do we have an applicant ready to go to provide us some insight into the art, please?
Hi. So first, I'd just like to give you a little bit of a background about the artist that we've chose. The artist, just so you guys have a relation to who he is. I'm not sure if you're familiar. On the waterfront, there's a piece of art of it's a large piece of stone that has a rectangular cutout on the waterfront. He did this art, and he did a couple more arts in New Brunswick, and St. John's. His style of art is like most of his arts works with granite or marble, and his style of art is all about the linear forms and passageways. When we went to his gallery, which is on Chain Lake Drive, and I would encourage you if you go take a look at his art, we related right away with the style of his art, just given that it's all about geometrical forms and the material that he chooses always are all like organic materials, like the white marble and black stone, and it's all earthy materials that we find that relates to. It's almost like the same style of our architecture, not necessarily this project, but generally the style of our architecture. And this is where we built a connection with the artist, and the way he present his ideas is he would make a small mock-up first, and then when it comes to actually executing this piece of art, he'll build it in full scale. So this piece here done the piece that is in the rendering there is actually an actual photo of the art that he ended up choosing. The opening in this art is it's not about the vanishing point. It's not a view towards Dartmouth. This is more of a stairway that would allow a person to actually go through it. And his rationale behind that is it's not really related to the architecture of the building. It's just like the rationale of the art itself is that you need to be a pure person to actually go through a narrow passageway. That's his rationale of the art. And but the way we see it as architects, that this is an interactive piece of art. Like the other piece of art on the waterfront, I just stand and look around and I see families stop by there and their kids will just go inside that opening and take photos, and I find it as an interactive piece of art, and this one will be the same. And the way I see this piece of art is benefiting the building is really not about the shape of the art. It's the fact that the location of the art as well attracts people to walk through our site, and that's the main intent of the art. And we were doing this piece of art regardless whether we went through the site plan approval and the variance or not. This is something that we have chose from the beginning. But I want to relate what I want to talk more about, like the articulation of the facade and how the art is helping with that. In a typical as of right through the land use bylaw, we're supposed to do this 8-meter articulation, which creates masses on the facade that relates to the human scale, because most of the time you have your street wall right directly on the sidewalk, so you're walking right close to the building. In this scenario, our street wall is pushed in 10 meters versus like the 1.5 to 2 meters typically you see in any site. This one is pushed in 10 meters, which pushes the street wall away from pedestrians and give you a chance to look at both the street wall and the project as a whole. We find that the horizontal articulation works well with the vertical articulation, just to have a coherent design. And this gives an opportunity for pedestrian to look at the site from further away. And having that piece of art there, as I said before, it will animate this sidewalk, will attract people to go through the site and have an opportunity to see the project from further away.
Thank you. Jesse.
Thanks for that explanation. And I can understand your rationale in terms of how it fits with your architectural vision. I'm just curious, did you have any conversations or discussions with the community about what type of art they feel would fit best in their neighborhood prior to selecting an artist?
No, this was a discussion between us, the artist, and the owner. That's the art where we ended up choosing.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Everybody's asked questions. I have no questions. I'll give one last chance before we go to the discussion part. Any final questions? Okay, hearing none. I'd like to ask if somebody put a motion on the floor as per the agenda. You know the process because we've done this for 13 times now.
I can do it.
Thank you, Jesse.
Okay, so I will put forward a motion that the Design Advisory Committee recommend the approval of the site plan approval application for 1824 Faulkner Street, 5 Dixon Street, and 56 to 64 Lyle Street, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
All right, moved by Jesse. Do I have a seconder, please? I see Tom raise his hand, so it's seconded by Tom, so the motion's on the floor. All right, we've had an explanation on, everybody's asked their questions, so I'll now open up the floor to commentary. Actually, just briefly. The way I'd like to break this down is we'll take this variance request and break it into its components. So we'll say, one, does what's being asked for, does it contribute to the visual interest and the appeal of the street wall? Does the developer provide public art? And does it meet the criteria of there being the street wall being wider and more dramatic changes to projections and recesses? So why don't we just open the floor to comments first, because I know people maybe have a few things. I'm not hearing anything right away, so we'll just say, I'll ask the question, does this contribute to the visual interest and the appeal of the street wall? This would be two things. One's the public art, and two is the way they changed the street wall from what would have been built as of right.
If I really don't want to start off, and anyway, I have no concerns whatsoever with the articulation of the street wall. I think it is a very good design solution for the strong vertical elements in the tower. I kind of like the black and the recessed, and from a design point of view, I think it still meets the articulation that was in the original design requirements for every 8 meters to change the material. So I have no concern with that variation. I would like to throw in, as a urban designer, landscape architect, that I do think the 26 floors is going to cast a huge shadow. And I noticed from the site plan that the building is to the front, i.e. to the south of the site, and all the public amenity spaces is at the back, i.e. in the shadow. And I wonder, is it too late to put the building back and move all those public utility spaces to the front? They are labeled, what are they labeled? The outdoor amenity area and the flat landscaped podium, but they're at the back of the building, which will be always in shadow. So it's just an idea to the architects to move it forward as a good site design. I also think that the site plan could be livened up a bit. There's a very articulate piece in the design manual called Open Space Design that talks about trees defining the edge of the site. It depends about changes of material and planters and seating areas. I don't see any of that on the site plan. So maybe the planners should go back and look. It's no longer within our purview, but I just can't let it go without passing a comment. As for the art, we have varying opinions, and I think the architect has said that they're going with it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I would also like to include in the comments that we should be pushing sustainable art that leads us to the future, art that brings us to Halifax 2050, rather than maybe irrelevant, very, very, very minute little sculptures against a 26-floor building. I think it may be public art, but it's going to be irrelevant where it is sitting at the foot of the McDonald Bridge. So those are my two comments that I would like to be included in the revisions. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get to those two comments about the amenities in the site plan after we at the tail end here. I'll come back to that, Tom. All right. That is for inclusion in a motion. Jesse and Sarah and Sujana, any thoughts on just the variance itself?
Maybe we should do phrase of the day. You should teach us.
I think the recess that is provided for the building looks really good, and it stands apart from the current buildings we're seeing right now. As per the public art feature, I still think that there's a lot that could be improved in that art piece, and I agree with all the comments. Sorry, I couldn't hear what Tom was saying.
So much there's a lot of noise.
Can you hear me now, Tom? Hello?
We can hear you now, Sujana.
The last
hear
2
me now?
minutes have been kind of a mess, I think.
No. Yes.
Sorry, Tom, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
I'm going to say, Tom, hold tight for a second. And Sujana, I'd just like you to finish your thoughts. I mean, I lost you. You were talking about the art and how it can be approved. I didn't hear anything else here, and maybe other people feel the same.
I like the building articulation, but
Yes.
definitely not the public art piece. I think the public art piece should be something that is more contextual. I understand that the artist piece on the waterfront was successful, but that's entirely a different context than it being located surrounding a residential neighborhood. And also the landscape around the art piece could be improved so that it is more interactive with the public, and the public can go around the art piece and have a lot of fun, instead of the art piece just being a standalone piece at the corner of the property and just a visual element.
Okay, noted. All right, I'll go to Jesse and I'll go to Sarah if you have comments. Just speaking explicitly only on the variance, whether it meets the criteria of the variance.
I don't have an issue with the variance. Regarding the art, I mean, I think that the developers should engage with the community when choosing an artist and an art installation that's going to be in a residential neighborhood. We can make that a recommendation. I know that it probably won't matter for this particular application, but I would encourage the city to think about ways that they could encourage a bit more oversight or criteria for consultation when we're selecting art and who gets to participate and who benefits. So that's my only comment.
Okay. Sarah?
I have no issue with the variance. I think it's kind of confusing when we're asked a certain question, because I don't think the art essentially benefits enough to justify the variance, but I don't have an issue with the variance because I think it's well done. I agree with Jesse. I think I understand that it's private property, but when it's for the public consumption, the art pieces, I think community is really important, particularly when you're building community in a certain area like North Dartmouth, and adding a lot of folks to that community. But just trying to think if that's all of my thoughts. I actually don't have any issue with the art piece itself. I do think it's a little small for the magnitude of the building. And I think that there could be some more engaging pieces or additional pieces perhaps, but I'm not an art critic, so I don't want to kind of step into that role. But I think that the size difference is pretty staggering when you see them side by side. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Okay. So what I get here is we're okay with the variance. It meets the criteria. The criteria is that it has to be more dramatic. And okay, so it meets that criteria. And there must be public art. That's it. Public art must be included. And there is public art. We don't have the right to judge whether or not the public art is good or not good enough, right? If there's public art, it's there. We're supposed to approve it. But we can, so we should be approving this, but we can make recommendations if somebody wants to make an amendment to the motion. So I think where I'd go, where we normally go with this is, we know this will get approved, and the only question is whether or not we're going to make an amendment to it for other considerations. And I've heard a couple of good things, you know. So I guess I'll open the floor again. If somebody wish to make an amendment, they have the wording in place. If I said, Susanna, if I went to you, you made a recommendation about the landscape around the art. Okay.
Yeah. So as we see right now in the application and the site plan and where the art piece is located, I don't feel that it is that engaging with the public. It's just something that you walk by but not necessarily interact with that piece. So if that's the intent of the artist, to make it visually good and have public interact with that piece, I think the landscape, and as Tom suggested, bringing some of the amenities to the front of the building and having maybe more pathways around it, planting beds, and things like that would definitely improve the art piece. And again, I don't necessarily like the design of the art piece itself, but as you said, I can't comment on that. So
that is outside our scope.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's a piece of art and it's made by a professional artist that meets the criteria, okay. I mean, like, I've heard a couple of suggestions, but does anybody have specific wording? I would need somebody to come up with wording. If there's something that you would like to add to this motion before I call the question, I need you to step forward with the wording for an amendment.
Are we allowed to incorporate the community engagement piece, or is that outside of our scope?
I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, like to consult the community about the art?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the art decision is already made, but even encouraging engagement with the surrounding community about what their foot traffic and pedestrian experience might be like.
That can certainly be added to give consideration to exactly what you said.
Yeah, I guess I'd make a motion to make an amendment to the motion to include encouraging the, sorry, I'm getting feedback here, to encourage the applicant to engage with surrounding communities about their pedestrian experience around both the public art and the grounds of the building.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Yeah, I can
Motion to amend, seconded by Jesse. And I say, Jill, do we have somebody who's, I'll get to you in a second, Tom. Do you have somebody who can write this so that we can see it?
I am gonna pop it in the chat here. I'm just putting it on paper right now, and then I'll pop it in. I am gonna pop it in.
Thank you. Tom's bandwidth. Tom, you should probably turn off your video. I think that's having an effect on your feed. Thank you. Yeah, that might be better. Okay, so I'll open the floor for questions or comments about this amendment before we go to the question. Does anybody else wish to discuss it?
if the amendment is about the landscaping around the public art, I think we should add to that amendment that the open space design from the urban design manual should be improved. I also would let our committee know that we do not have the right under this committee to make any comments. We can approve or disapprove or discuss the variance, and all four of us have agreed that it is fine. But I think as a committee, we should record our concerns so that at least publicly, we are seen to be aware of some of the issues. They may not be within our peruse to make these comments, but I strongly feel that the minutes, which are public, we should at least voice our concerns so that it's not seen that we rubber stamp all sorts of developments. So in this case, I think we agree with the variance. It's no problem, but the public art and the setting of the building is very much an issue. And I think that our previous amendment should include the open space design as per the urban design manual should be applied to the site plan. It should be more vigorous and more rigorous and complement the building rather than being a very minor addendum to the building. Can we add that?
Yeah, well, there'd have to be just an amendment to the amendment. We've done that lots of times. So I think as soon as we see it here, Tom, I would ask you to come up with specific wording to make a change to this.
Okay. The amendment is about the public art, so we've accepted. Let us say we think the public art or encourage the city to develop a program where the public can be consulted on the public art. We feel that the public art as it stands should be landscaped so that people can walk around it and interact with the public art. And we feel that the site plan for the whole building with the public art should more reflect the open space design mandate of the urban design manual. And also a minor point for the architect, move the building back so that all those amenity spaces are to the south rather than in the shadow of the building. Is that too much? Is anybody writing this?
Well, Tom, how would you feel about writing that into the chat? And I think we could handle this in two pieces. First, we'll do a vote to amend it as what's in the chat right now, and then we can amend it a second time with what you've come up with.
Where's the chat? The chat. That's beyond my capability.
What, to write it up? You can do it.
Okay.
I can pop it in the chat. I just want to make sure that I have everything that you're looking for. So it was a public participation program to comment on the public art submission and landscaping and additional setbacks, building setbacks.
It's more than additional setback. It's moving the outdoor amenity spaces to the front of the building, which is south facing, rather than in the shadow of the building. Can you add that, Jill?
Yeah, I'll pop something in here and just.
While Jill's working on that, I'm going to keep it, we're going to do a vote on just this part of the amendment. I'll call for the question. All in favor of the amendment as written in the chat, say aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, hearing none, the amendment passes. So now we'll go on to another amendment, which Jill and Tom are working on.
Is Jill working on this, or who is typing the specific amendment? Jill?
Yeah, she just put something in the chat, Tom. And I think she's still working, but Tom, is what she's written in line with what you were hoping to see?
The include landscaping and relocation of the public outdoor amenities of the site to the south of the building. And to follow more closely the Urban Design Manual, Chapter 3 for open space design.
Okay, while Jill's typing that, does anybody else expect any further amendments beyond this one? I see a no from Jesse. Sujana's already said her thing. Sarah? No. Okay, so we're waiting for the specific wording. And Jill, thank you very much for working on this.
So I have include public participation program for comment on public art submission, and include additional landscaping, relocation of public amenity out spaces to south of building, and adhere to Chapter 3 of Design Manual regarding shadows.
Are you able to paste that into the chat?
No, not regarding shadows, regarding the whole of the open space design, not just the shadow, Jill. Just take out as regard shadows.
Thank you, Jill. Are you satisfied with that, Tom? And if so, you should make a motion and read that out loud.
Yeah, that is fine. Thank you very much for putting words to that. So what do I do, Ted?
You say, I move to amend the
I-
motion on the floor as follows.
I move to amend the motion on the floor as follows, to include a public participation program for comments on the public art submission, and include additional landscaping, relocation of the public outdoor amenity spaces to the south of the building, and adhere to Chapter 3 of the design manual when it comes to dealing with open space design. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a couple words added at the end there, Jill, which I know you'll get in the minutes. Do I have a seconder for this motion?
Yes, I second the motion.
Be seconded by Suchana. Thank you very much. If we're all talked about over this, I think I'll call for the question. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 All right, opposed, say nay. All right, opposed. Okay, hearing none. The second amendment passed as presented. All right. Any other further discussion? Okay, hearing none. I think we're ready for the final vote. And so what I'd ask is for somebody to make a motion. Let me get the wording right here. To approve the amended motion as previously discussed. Say I so move. Can I have somebody do that, please?
I so move.
I think that's good. Do I have a seconder for the amendments for the fully amended motion? Okay, seconded by Jesse. I'll call for the question. All in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the amended motion passes. Takes care of most of our business for tonight. I'll go to item 9.1.2, which is the site plan approval tracker updated by Stephanie. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the item that you see on the tracker is the one that's been presented tonight. And actually there is one additional site plan approval that we do have that needs to be added for a rooftop feature for mechanical space on a Dalhousie building on Sexton campus. That's currently under review right now, but I would expect to come to the committee in the next couple of months. But otherwise, the additional applications had either been closed or the developers had come in for building permits or development permits.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions, anyone? All right, hearing none. That's it. Might be a few more months before we meet again. The date of the next meeting, if required, will be July 13th, 2022. That takes us to the end of the meeting. For adjournment, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Jesse. The meeting is over. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck.
Folks,
Okay.
bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Record.